Well, hello, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to session 4 of Creating a Buzz About Bees in Ontario. And tonight we're going to be talking about getting it on the shelf. We have a great lineup of speakers for you this evening, and we're really happy to see you here. For those who are new, and haven't joined any of the sessions before, my name is Karen Fisher, and I am an Agriculture and Rural Economic Development Advisor with the Economic Development Division of the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs. And my colleague Carolyn Pewterbow and I are very pleased to be working with the Ontario Beekeepers Association to have delivered, this is the 4th in the series, of these Selling Food to Ontario sessions. So so glad that you're here, happy we could partner. And I think I'm going to introduce one of Carolyn's and my other colleagues, Pierrette Desrochers. And Pierrette is joining us tonight, not only for the learning, but we did ask her to bring us a land acknowledgement for tonight's session as well. And Pierrette is an agriculture development advisor working out of covering the Parry Sound, Nipissing, and Sudbury regions in Northern Ontario. So Pierrette, welcome and thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Bonsoir. Mino Dibikad. Acknowledging territorial Indigenous territories is one way to recognize contemporary and historical Indigenous presence and land rights. It is a small step towards dismantling the continued impacts of colonialism and undoing Indigenous erasure in our everyday lives. This evening, OMAFRA staff, the Ontario Beekeepers Association and its members, recognizes that our work, all of our work, individually or together, sorry about that. We recognize that our work takes place on traditional Indigenous territories across the province. We acknowledge that there are 46 treaties and other agreements that cover the territory now called Ontario. We are thankful to be able to work and live in these territories. We are thankful to the First Nations, Métis, Inuit people who have cared for these territories since time immemorial and who continue to contribute to strengthen Ontario and to all communities across the province. I am speaking to you from the land of the Ojibwe, also known as the Anishinaabe peoples, which means the true people, the original people. Other First Nations and European settlers called them Ojibwe or Chippewa, which meant puckered up, because the Ojibwe traditionally wore moccasins with a puckered seam across the top. The areas that I work in, known as Sudbury, Nipissing, and Parry Sound districts, are all lands under the Robinson-Huron Treaty 61 of 1850 and Williams Treaties of 1923. There are many Indigenous communities in my area around the French River and Lake Nipissing. The landscape, the water, the forests, the wildlife continues to take my breath away. I understand why my ancestors of European descent chose this area to settle in, unfortunately, causing irreparable pain and suffering with our colonialism attitude and actions. With my work in agriculture and food, I have huge admirations towards the Anishinaabe peoples who own this land way before us. I respect and appreciate this area by being a good steward of the land and the water that surrounds us. I also hope that my interactions with Anishinaabe peoples will educate me on their values, their traditions, and develop reconciliatory actions to help reduce the irreparable pain and suffering our systemic colonialism inflicted on all Indigenous peoples on Turtle Island. Let's open our hearts and our mind to embrace reconciliation. Thank you. Merci. Miigwech.
You know, we find it like we are committed to sharing an acknowledgement at the beginning of all of our meetings, as I suspect many of you do in organizations that you're working with. And, you know, we're really committed to advancing reconciliation for ourselves and as well in our work. So thank you very much, Pierrette, for that. I'm going to turn it over to Bernie Wheely, and Bernie is the president of the OBA, and he is going to just chat a little bit about the association.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out tonight, and welcome everybody, and thank you for the acknowledgement there to start off the meeting. I won't hold everybody up too much. I know you got a full program here tonight, and that sounds pretty interesting. Just want to talk about a couple of things. One of the things we're working on this year is more board nominations. We have a number of directors and board members stepping down. Their terms are up, or people moving on because their lives are busy. So we're looking for nominations to the board. If you're interested, let us know. And even if you're not able to be a full board member, we're really looking for volunteers and helpers and members for all our various committees. We really like to get our committees filled out with members from across Ontario to help us out. It's not onerous, but the more people we have on the committees, the better ideas that we have, and the easier the workload is for those that are on there. So give some consideration to becoming a committee member and helping us out, even if it's for a short period of time, just you know, 1 or 2 special projects. Give it some thought. We'd really like to have you out. Everyone that helps out and becomes active, you know, makes our organization that much stronger. Just want to let everybody know on a few things that we're up to. We've had numerous talks with OMAFRA, and thanks for OMAFRA coming out tonight, but various departments within OMAFRA. We've been working on improvements to our bee mortality insurance and production insurance. That's going to be a work in progress. So if you have any skills or interests and ideas in that, let us know. But that's one of the things we hope to get accomplished in the next year. We've already seen improvements to the CAP, which is Canada Agricultural Partnership, and a few other programs that we've seen some improvements. We're, you know, in discussions with OMAFRA, the government, and our research partners at the universities and colleges for more research dollars and projects. As we all know, we had a terrible year last year, and we really haven't got to the bottom of what caused all that. So we do need more research and ideas, products to make our beekeeping life a little bit easier. So thanks, everyone. Enjoy your evening. It sounds like a great program tonight. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Bernie. Lots of great things happening with the OBA, as we've heard over the last 4 Tuesday evenings, and you know, lots of work being done on the strategic plan, and you know, lots of exciting activities. So good luck with all of that to you and your team, Bernie, in accomplishing all that you are hoping to. Our first speaker tonight, our keynote, is Dan Thurston from the Thurston Honey Bee Company. And Dan, do you want to, you know, just start up and share your screen and take it away? And thank you for joining. As you can see, Dan has joined us from his car.
So, and I saw up on the schedule there that the just approach is the way that I treat things in terms of selling honey, and that's exactly what I've got a presentation about for you guys. So just to introduce myself, and as well as my partner, Steph, We together make up Thurston Honey Bee Co. We are based out of 2 different geographic locations. Guelph, where we've lived for like 12 years now, and as well as the Kawarthas, where we actually now kind of half to 3/4 live and are working on transitioning that way, where we both grew up. And our operation is kind of split between the 2 spots. We keep about, this year, we'd be somewhere around the 360, 375 mark in terms of hives. We didn't really expand much this year. We overwintered quite well, and so instead we sold a whole bunch of nukes, and didn't do a whole lot of splitting. In terms of the retail side of things, though, we supply between 50 and 60 different places that either we wholesale honey to, and then they resell, or that we supply for the kitchen or the bakery side of things. Everything to do with running the honey business sort of things is completely done off the cuff, and kind of everything that I have to say today is completely anecdotal. There's no expertise in terms of how we treat our business. I'm definitely a beekeeper first, and then the honey sales and business side of things is secondary to that, and something that sometimes I'm really happy I do, and other times I wish I could focus a bit more on the beekeeping and a less on the bookkeeping side of things. But as it is, that's how it works, and it's going all right for us. And I also saw that part of this series, which I unfortunately haven't been following along on, but I'll have to this winter watch the YouTube videos, talks about grocery chains and that sort of thing. We don't do anything on that scale. Almost every business that we work with in terms of wholesaling to and them retailing, or supplying to kitchens and bakeries and that sort of thing, is done with smaller businesses. A couple of the restaurants are chain restaurants, but small chains, not franchises, sort of thing. And we certainly don't have anything in grocery stores. We don't have a barcode on our label, that sort of thing. We tend to work with bakeries and cafes and butcher shops, independent restaurants, farms and farm market stands, and breweries and cideries and that sort of thing. So that's an introduction to us and what the landscape of our honey sales look like. The reason that we got into wholesale retail was purely by accident, really. The main thing, and I've been doing this since I just had a handful of hives. I was looking back through photos today for this presentation, and then correlating it with when we started invoicing for things, and really only had a handful of hives, less than 10, I think, when I first started selling honey to places like that. But really, it was just the need for income for the hives and their inputs into them to actually pay for themselves in some capacity anyway. Especially as any of the beekeepers listening tonight know, it's not cheap to expand hive numbers just from equipment alone, let alone the inputs that go into them. And so really that's what got us onto it, was the need for there to be cash coming straight from the business on that side. The reason that we specifically got into wholesaling was primarily because of the lack of time that I had. For as long as I can remember, and up until this year specifically, I've always had at least 2 or 3 jobs on the go, and the bees being one of them now. But I've always worked in a way that I had at least one full-time job, and then a part-time job, and then the beekeeping job as well, which allowed there to be additional income while the business grew. But it also meant that I didn't have time to really be focusing on doing much more than that. In terms of like doing a farmer's market, for example, I always thought that would be a nice way to retail our honey, but it's challenging to have a day or two of prep work that goes to the market, then the market day itself. And then what I could do was kind of squeeze in time here and there to try and get my name out and give samples to places and try and get our honey on the shelves. And I could do that, in the evenings or on days that I did have time, and then kind of work around supplying in that regard. So when I did have time. Second to that, in terms of the farmers markets, specifically in the two locations where we are, most farmers markets have vendor capacities on the number of beekeepers, and especially the Guelph one, but the same is true for Lindsay, Peterborough, Kawarthas area. There were already beekeepers in place in those farmers markets as well, so it could be challenging in that regard to actually have a direct sales opportunity. And then in terms of having a personal retail outlet, like a honey house, a store and a honey house, I wish we had something like that. I really do wish that we had a little store of our own that that we could be actually getting more retail price for honey, rather than having to work with more retailers. But it's not a reality for us, and neither is a roadside stand. And so the wholesale retail importance continues. The other reason that we got into the wholesale retail side of things was demand from friends. Thurston Honey Bee Co started getting to a size where we were able to take on a lot of business right around the time. So in my mid-20s, around the time when a lot of my friends were kind of finding their place in their careers, especially those that were in the food service industry or starting their own food related businesses, either that or they worked at cafes and bakeries and that sort of thing. And so really the side of it that I'm talking about there is people were interested in the fact that we had a product, specifically honey, that was our own good, and they wanted to share that and promote us just in a community sort of way. So those are the main reasons that we went the direction of wholesale retail. In terms of we got started there, but I've kind of taken that and rolled with it. We spend a lot of time actually thinking about this and trying to find our way into new marketplaces, new spots. And so I thought I'd just list some of the different ways that we do come across opportunities. One is local publications. So any area will have different publications that they put out, whether it's a quarterly or a monthly or some sort of magazine, newspaper that kind of talks about current events in the community, things that are going on. And often in the margins of those will be different ads for different local shops and that sort of thing, or a spotlight, like an article on a soon to be in the works or soon to be on Main Street sort of article about something coming to that area. So just kind of keeping on top of the local publications or people that are advertising, and just kind of sourcing out a place where there might possibly be a new retail venue is one of the main things that I do. Social media definitely plays a huge role in that. Between myself and Steph and other friends and family, people are regularly sending me new spots where there might be an opportunity for us to sell honey in, like a new store opening or somewhere where we may not have considered, somewhere they've stumbled upon or somewhere that they actually already shop. That's actually, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but that's something that I definitely find is you can have a place that you regularly visit and you hadn't really considered until you actually realize, oh, I'm shopping here all the time, and why aren't they using my honey if they've got honey on the shelf? That's what the one photo is there. That was a cafe that I'd been going to with semi regularity, and they had this crystallized squeeze bottle labeled bee juice. Clearly not something that comes out of our kitchen or out of our operation, but it meant that there was an opportunity there. They're interested in having honey available in their dairy station at the cafe, and the honey that they do have isn't very functional for your average coffee drinker. And so took that as a sign that we should approach them and pitch to them. My window shopping point there is kind of I spent a lot of time driving through small and rural places, but small towns in general, or cities down the main street. If you can just kind of tell based on the signage that a place has, or the front display that someone has, whether or not it's a place that maybe you should consider pitching honey to, or you think honey might fit in. Anywhere that people are interested in buying local goods, they'll often have an interest in taking on honey, or potentially candles, or other byproducts. So that's what I mean, is just keeping an eye out as you're driving through town for new spots opening, or something that looks like it would be worth strolling into and seeing if they might be interested in having honey on their shelves. The word of mouth thing is of course huge and already been touched on here, but that's just listening and hearing people say that they heard a new spot is opening, or kind of trying to pay attention if there's somewhere that maybe doesn't have honey yet that could. The photo there with me and Santa is markets. Like I already said, we don't have a regular farmers market, but we do plenty of one-off markets, summer solstice markets, or Christmas markets, Thanksgiving markets, that sort of thing. And I find that people will often, they'll find you at the booth there. There's a degree of authenticity that I think consumers associate with you being at a market specifically. And if they happen to have a shop, or they know someone that does, or if down the road they do start to, I think there's often a push for them to source out a honey supplier, or any supplier for that matter, from a spot like that, if they're trying to support the local economy and have a farm direct sort of opportunity to source for their own spot. The same goes for chefs and people that are working in kitchens as well. Another opportunity that we've found for reselling our honey is actually through bee yards. So the landowners where you keep your hives, you give them their yard rent, and most often they're not actually consuming that all themselves. They're giving it to their friends and their family and their relatives, who then get a taste of your honey. They enjoy it, and then either they have another friend that runs some sort of business that might be able to take on your honey, and they've essentially endorsed your product to that owner. All the work of pitching is taken out, or they run something themselves. And then the other side of it is we're lucky that we do have a couple of different yards where they also have like a farm market, actually, as part of their farm. They run a CSA, or they butcher their own meat and then sell to customers. And if we have a yard on their farm, they're more than happy to promote that honey as having come from their farm and be part of their offerings. So be it, and specifically choosing, I'll go out of my way to try and find yard locations where there will be an opportunity for us to actually sell honey there and have that yard make money. The dining point is that often, if you go to a restaurant, I'll be scanning over the menu to see if they use honey in something, or if there's something that potentially might contain honey, and if so, to then follow up and pitch that way. And then in terms of referrals, that referral of friends and family, of landowners and that sort of thing, and your own friends and relatives. But I've found we've definitely found ourselves in restaurants as a result of us supplying one restaurant, and then there's a staff shift, the chef moves to another spot, that sort of thing, and all of a sudden we're supplying another restaurant and another restaurant because of referrals from just staff movement. And then in terms of pitching, I thought I'd kind of talk to you about the way that I go about doing it. One of the main things that I think is important in here is that I definitely avoid stepping on toes when it comes to pitching honey and trying to get our honey into new locations. I try and take a community approach to that. And what I mean by that is that, like, if I go into a spot and I see that there's honey on the, if I go into a spot intending to pitch and try and get our honey on the shelves there, and I see another local beekeeper, and when I say local, I mean like an Ontario-based beekeeper, someone that's not essentially Billy Bee or Brooks, or someone that's actually a local beekeeper, or a small scale beekeeper, someone that's doing it themselves, then I make a point of not even trying. And often I'll say to the person that I was going to pitch to, or the person working in that spot, that I was coming in to check out your shop. I was planning on pitching honey to you, but I already see that you've got someone on your shelf, and usually I'll know who it is anyway too, and I'll promote them and say, I'm glad that you're supporting a local producer. I wish that we could be supplying you, but I'm glad that you've already got someone here that's providing you a quality product. And so I really hate, like, a couple different times I've had to sort of defend our placehold in on shelves because someone's come in and very aggressively tried to make sure and assert that their honey goes on that shelf, or they, like, they try and shame our business, or like put us down, or like say negative things about our business or our product, which I think is completely unfair. It's usually untrue, and it doesn't do any service to the community doing that. So I definitely avoid stepping on toes when it comes to pitching. In terms
Dan,
of, like,
sorry,
yep.
Dan, we're running out of time.
Oh my
So
gosh, I'm sorry. I'll
yeah,
stop
no, that's
elaborating so
okay.
much.
Amazing and great information. Can you wrap up in 2 minutes or so?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
So when it comes to going in and pitching, I make sure to have a positive attitude and be interested in what the business actually is doing themselves, not view it just as an opportunity for myself. The best time to catch the right person tends to be weekday mornings. Going on the weekend or evenings, afternoons, you tend to get staff that they just end up having to say, I need to talk to the manager or the owner anyway. I always keep sample in the truck, just in case I do run into a spot where I think that our honey should be pitched. If I'm pitching creamed honey, I try not to store that in the summertime in the truck, and vice versa. Liquid tends to crystallize in the winter. I always make sure to give a business card and have them on hand as well, and as well as taking business cards, and be ready to share a price list. And if I do take a business card and I give a sample, I make sure to follow up as well. In terms of delivery and invoicing, part of doing the wholesale thing is you end up dealing with a lot of calls and emails and texts. Really, what I'd like to do, a friend of mine that runs a cidery has his website set up so that all of the different retailers that they actually order through the website, and it streamlines that rather than having a whole bunch of emails just for one order. With our price list, we have suggested retail prices so that we can make sure that they look at our wholesale price and they understand what they can be selling, like what we suggest, and know that they can sell that product for, so they recognize what sort of markup they'll get. We try and recommend different sizes and bottle types, so restaurants or cafes for their dairy station, we recommend squeeze bottles, that sort of thing. In terms of delivery dates, we try and be mindful of both ourselves and the business. So we try and make sure that it's within a week, or sometimes there's a pinch with a restaurant and we get it there as quickly as possible, but we try and give guidelines for when we can expect them. Some vendors prefer electronic versus paper invoices, and we try and work according to that, but we always like electronic because it's easy to look up and there's always a trail. And then, of course, it's always nice to have a net payment, so a period that you expect payment in. Especially on the restaurant side of thing, it can take forever for invoices to be paid, but then other people, they're more than happy to pay cash right on the spot. The little sign, the little photo in the corner there is of a sign. We like to have a little sign in our retail spots. Just gives a little blurb about ourselves, a photo of us, that sort of thing. And then every time I do a delivery, I also purchase something in the store. or at the restaurant, I do pickup, takeout, that sort of thing. I think the purchasing rapport really does show that you're invested not only in them giving you business, but you giving them. In terms of inventory, we try and keep track of when people will be ordering and on what sort of schedule, and try and be on the business side, packing side for ourselves, be anticipating when people are going to be coming in. I love when there's a lead time and we can communicate with them that, okay, in about 3 weeks time, we'll be ready for another one. We do spend time, shopping, where trying to support where people that are supporting us, but we do also spend time going out of our way to do inventory checks, to switch out crystallized honey, which is definitely something that, it takes time and can be sort of a hassle, but I think does translate to better sales when things look good on the shelves. Product availability, what I mean there is it's really something like honeycomb is really easy for people to always want. And it's tough to turn down and say that, we just don't have that volume to supply you all the time. So by product availability, I mean that, having a well enough stock to be able to promise not too many people the same thing, and end up selling short and having them have to go elsewhere for that one product and maybe others. In terms of price increases, which has been especially prominent this year, we just try and be mindful of them, give lots of notice, and explain that we're trying to keep our prices consistent, but unfortunately with the cost of packaging, that sort of thing, we are going to have to do marginal increases, and to give them at least a month's heads up. And then in terms of sharing online, every time we deliver, I'm not great on social media, but I do at least take the photos, well-intentioned, to post when we do something, and we definitely make sure to repost anytime someone tags us in a photo. Sorry to go over time there, but thank you guys for listening. I hope there was some good information there, and there was some benefit from you being able to look back on it too.
Dan, that was a great presentation. It's kind of funny because I'm kind of wrapping up at the end, and I think you just stole all my thunder. So,
oh, no.
But it's really great. Your how you run your business. You've figured out your niche. What works for you. You have some goals and aspirations, for the future, but you're really consistent, and it's really, really great advice for folks who are trying to get into that retail space. And I think there's a question in the chat for you. There are a couple. Crystallized honey. This has been a question that has been talked about, I think, at every session. Do you take back crystallized honey, or what is your preferred approach or equipment for liquefying and maintaining flavor profiles?
That was kind of what I meant in that point about doing drop-ins on retailers, just to be able to see and make sure that that things aren't crystallizing. If they are, just switch them out, inventory for inventory. Even if the business isn't ready to reorder, I'm still happy to switch out, 3 jars instead of, give them whole case sort of thing. In terms of then reliquefying, actually what we still use is 2 different things. We use like a water jacketed sump, like that you would normally have attached to your extractor. So you can control the temperature and have it be indirect. It also doesn't damage the label that way if it's not waterproof. And I've also purchased a restaurant supply company, like a warming cabinet that works really well, and you can also adjust the temperature that way. And so we can do larger volumes that way.
One of the things that really came out loud and clear in your presentation as well is just how important it is to build and maintain all the relationships that you have with the different retailers, restaurants, et cetera, that you're selling your honey to. And so, and that's also a very common thread that we've heard throughout the presentation. So, thank you very much for being with us tonight again. And thank you for your insights. So our next two presenters are actually going to be speaking from the retailer side. So we're going to get that different perspective, like we've heard from, Dan, who's selling to, selling to the retailer, and now we're going to hear from a couple of retailers and what their expectations are from their perspective. And I'd first up like to introduce you to Wendy Mortimer, and Wendy is the owner-operator since February of 2021 of the Coe Hill Grocery Store. And Wendy's going to share some of her, some of the things that she looks for as a retailer in, in the products that she takes into her store, and she'll speak specifically to bees and honey and honey products.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The Coe Hill store, if you don't know, it's the area. It's the only grocery store for 35 minutes drive in either direction. And in fact, the one 35 minutes when I bought my store, I had nothing to do with it. And so we're a really important big wheel in a really big fish in a really tiny pond. So I really enjoyed that presentation. Thank you very much. Now I'm going to talk about it from the other side, and I hope that you can see how these two perspectives mesh together very nice. I probably don't have to make this pitch here, but there are advantages to selling through a grocery store over farm gate or farmers markets. You can concentrate on the producing and not spending time selling, driving, frequent packing up, unpacking of your goods. I'm a farmer, and I did farmers markets for a while, and man, it almost killed me. One point of sale does make bookkeeping simpler, and since my bookkeeper just retired, I hate bookkeeping, and that's what I'm doing a lot of. So I wish I just had one vendor and one customer. You build a relationship which enhances community connectedness. I'm kind of friends now with my suppliers. You as a producer get to piggyback on the store's advertising and in-house promotions, displays, sales. You can maybe gain a greater awareness of additional opportunities like value-added products, out-of-season options, and so on. And okay, I'll talk about season later. And you gain a partner whose success is linked to yours. And if we're all pulling the same direction, it makes it a lighter load. So there are some good financial practices for a good farmer-grocer relationship from the grocer's perspective. I really appreciate when you know what you need to get for your product before you call the store. If I say, how much do you want for your turnips? And you say, I don't know, how much do you want to pay? I just think, oh no, don't make me do this. I hate squeezing farmers for lower prices, but I also hate not selling their stuff because it's too expensive. Do know what other grocery stores sell that will be price compared to your local artisanal product, and make the case for your quality offering over the mass-produced no-name version, if appropriate, or be cheaper, and then you don't need to justify your higher price. Do prepare, as the last slide showed in the last presentation, proper invoices with your name, date, and address, product description, and price, the type of payment that you accept, whether it's e-transfer, check, cash, and make it easy to get paid. We don't have a finance department, and unfortunately, we just have me as the bookkeeper, and I have lots on my plate. So I'm used to getting calls from people saying, are you paying my bill that I sent you yesterday? It's like, I'll get to it. So invoices, nice invoices help. So here's how it works at our store. And I have no background in the retail business. I have no idea how other stores do it. So this is my one-off advice. My store markup will be 30 to 40%. That means we take your price divided by about 0.7 to get our price. And then we decide on the type of supplier you will be. Either I buy a case of your, say, 250 milliliter jars of honey at your wholesale price, and I sell them for whatever I want, but typically marked up 30%. All the risk is mine. I might have to eat a lot of honey if no one buys it. And in this way, you might get less per jar, but you don't need to tend the products. We will reorder when we run out or close to run out if there's sufficient demand. It might take us 6 months to sell a case, and then we probably won't reorder. Or you can set up a display of your products that can be simple or elaborate, where you set the price that you want, which includes my 25%. And every month you drop by the store to see what is sold, or I send you an account of sales and I pay you based on sales. You own the product, you take home what doesn't sell, or I guess what crystallizes, I suppose. My store has both types of arrangements with different vendors. Some like to work one way, some another. And I like to keep it simple. So depends on the range of products that you have and so on. Okay. Here's some other suggestions. Provide information about your farm or yourself for our displays and our advertising. A photo is nice. Unlike my presentation here, where it has no photos, just words, I'm sorry. Make your products as attractive as possible. A nice package with a good label really will increase sales. More information is better. Our busy season is tourist season because we are in cottage country. Produce sales of all kinds of products drop by a very significant amount, maybe 50% after Labor Day and another 25% after Thanksgiving. So plan if you can to have your products peak in June, peak availability, June, July, and August if you're selling in a tourist zone, very important. You will need to barcode your products so that we can swipe them at the till. We can help you do that. The reason we have to do that is our store, we hire a lot of summer students that run the tills, and they don't know one vendor from another, and we get things miscoded unless there's a barcode, and then it's perfect. So your label will need to accommodate a sticky label with a barcode where possible. And it may be necessary for you to tell the shopkeeper how to best care for your products, if they have to be chilled or sprayed or covered or dry, warm, whatever. Okay. So here's some words: small farm, local, regenerative, organic, community building, sustainable, low carbon, human scaled, and again, regenerative, can't say that often enough, agriculture. Very important words to put on your label if any of them are true. Don't limit yourself to farmers markets and farm gate sales models. Think, please, year round, not just harvest time. These were my problems when I was selling my stuff. People need good food in the off season too, and we'll be shopping at the grocery store all year. So we need products all year. Small stores like mine struggle with low winter sales, and we depend on the summer business to keep the store afloat through the lean times. And we find that seasonal pop-up competition skims the cream, that's the tourist season, and may inadvertently hurt foundational community businesses that are trying to stay viable year-round. And in a larger market, a bigger city where there's lots of choices, doesn't matter, but in a small town like ours, it really makes a difference. And I think that's my last slide. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Wendy. It's always really great to hear the perspective, from the grocer, right? And figure out how both of your needs can be met. I mean, one of the beautiful things about honey and other honey related products, is that it is one of those year-round products. And, it can be sold in a store like yours, like it would be a product that would be sold year round. So that's, a real bonus to a product like the honey.
Whether it's candles, or we have a honey producer or a beekeeper that makes deodorants and all kinds of things with honey, lip balms and so on. So some are big sellers in the summer, some are big sellers in the winter.
Yeah, and I think those are some of the things that might differentiate you from the larger retail chains like a Metro or the Loblaws. Being able to take a range of products, having some flexibility in terms of somebody can come into your store with a their own display. And like Dan mentioned, he likes to leave a card that describes his company, like what, their product and their story, which is also really important. Working with a smaller grocery like yours can really enhance that, right?
Right.
Like, you're really able to promote your own product, and there's more flexibility in being able to supply a range of products. Yeah, and this may be also a question for Dan, as well as you, Wendy. And I will say, for those who are interested in costing and pricing, our second session, I think, was on that topic, if you weren't able to attend. And so it might be worth going back and taking a look at the video of that session, to also figure out how to calculate that markup for yourself. What you need to charge. So Wendy, I don't know if you can address markup from your perspective.
Well, I have to make enough money selling your product to pay for the staff time involved in keeping the store clean and running the tills and so on. And we find, well, our target is a 30% markup on everything in the store. So a lot of stores play a lot of different games. I mean, if you're part of a big store, big family, Loblaws or Sobeys chain, they pretty much tell you these things you get 20% markup, these things you get 50% markup. Because I didn't really have this as my primary career, I didn't really have time to study that, or I didn't apprentice anywhere. So I just said, well, if our target's 30, we're just going to across the board charge 30% markup on everything. And so some of our prices seem higher than they are in other stores, and other things are quite a bit lower. But I'm not a shopper, I'm a farmer, and I just eat my own food. So I don't go to grocery stores much. So all that to say, my advice isn't necessarily universal advice. This is what you can do when you have a small store. And I'm mainly interested in the product. And if we make enough money to pay the staff and keep the lights on, that's good. That's all. I'm not looking to start an empire here or anything like that.
Right.
So markup is, it's a little tricky, because some things I know that when we put a 30% markup on it, it puts it into a stratospheric price range because people want, if you're used to shopping or you're used to selling at a farmer's market, you want yourself to get the retail price. And clearly that isn't what's going to happen at a grocery store. So I'm just saying 25% if you maintain the display at the store, 30% if I do it. And I hope that works for some people. It doesn't work for everyone.
Yeah, and it's working for you. And when John, our colleague, presented at the costing and pricing, he showed that range of, for this type of product, it's usually 60%, and for that type of product, it's 20. And, so it does vary across the board. And those are important conversations to have, when you're looking at approaching a retailer. So,
so the way to come at that number is you say you want $7 for a jar of honey. I divide what you sell it to me, I divide my wholesale price by 0.7. So I would sell that jar for $10. If that puts it into a price range where no one is going to buy it because other honey on the shelf is $4, unless you can make a really compelling case for why your honey is worth twice as much, I have to divide your price by 0.7 to get my price. And if that puts it out of range, then you have to take a lower price, divide it by 0.7, see if that gives you something you can live with. There's no point in not having stuff move. Nobody wants old product, but also you have to get a decent return. So depends how much your time is worth. If you want to go to farmers markets and sell it directly or have subscriptions or other direct sales, it really depends on the value of your time and travel and
Yes, no,
capacity to
great
supply a
points.
store. Yeah.
Yep, yeah, great points. And again, that was something that we really tried to drive home at the costing and pricing session too, is that your time has a value, right? And it's really important to take that into consideration as well
And I think
when
that
you are pricing.
yes, and your time should be at least worth minimum wage.
Mhm.
I think that that's important thing to think about, and price of gas and all those other things.
Yeah. I think we'll invite Leslie Zinger. And Leslie also is a grocer from a small local retailer from Top Market Family Farms.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I'll
Welcome.
introduce myself. So I'm kind of at the farmhouse table right now, being part of this conversation and presentation. So a lot of people in my neck of the woods know me as Farmer Leslie. We have started, I'll start with our farm. We do, our farm name is Top Market Meats. So I am a livestock farmer and trade. We've been doing farmers markets for 16 years and farm gate sales for 14. We've kind of closed down during COVID. I just don't want to do farm events with anywhere from 400 to 800 people at a time. So kind of changed a little bit in our farming ways. Now the store, Top Market Family Farms, we opened up, it'll be 6 years this December that we opened this up. And that was a continuation of farmers markets. So people can find local products all year round and not just at seasonal markets. We're running into that a lot as farmers myself. And with other farmers that a lot of people are like, see you next season. Mind you, we're farming and doing what we do all year long. And then our next adventure opening up is a coffee shop and deli in Cambridge as well. So we are definitely going to be having local honey for our tea drinkers and other things that are going to be on the menu at that location. But for our store, Top Market Family Farms, we're in Cambridge. So we have decided, maybe some of you guys know Donovan's Family Farm, they're in Cambridge. So I'm going to talk about why we picked Donovan's to have on our shelves. A lot of our customers, they wanted a local honey producer from Cambridge. And our store being in Cambridge, we actually reached out to Donovan's pretty much weeks before our store opened 6 years ago, and they were glad to be part of growing their business, being at a retail location and supplying us with honey. We do carry different size jars from them. I do want to talk about a little bit of labeling. Being a graphic designer myself years ago, having a very clean label for your honey to be displayed in stores is very key. Customers, I watch them all the time. They love to pick up the jars, look around, look at your name, where it's from, information that's all on these bottles. So it's very, very important to have that communication with customers and that we can also pass along to our customers. I know some of the people present doing the presentation, I mentioned that they do cards. That is really important as well. And also social media. So when our farmers do things, when they're doing anything with their honey, we will post those shares, repost them. And we also do our own posts educating people on the producers that we work with ourselves for our store. I know we were talking about barcodes. Barcodes is something that I love. I'm sure that is a common thing with stores because it's very easy for staff to just scan. So if you can put a barcode on, it definitely helps out being on shelves. These guys are working on getting a barcode. We actually have one at our till that staff can scan real quick for the different sizes of Donovan's honey here for the store. Another thing too is I know that some producers have had a hard time finding jars, but consistency in packaging is number one. If the packaging and everything is changing consistently, it is going to be very hard for customers to find that product. Or is this the same product? Is this a different person? So being consistent with your display, your labeling, your jarring is definitely important, but sometimes hiccups happen. it's a thing. Jars have been quite the struggle lately. Another thing too, talk about working with my beekeeper here, Donovan's, is communication is really, really, really important when dealing with a grocery store. So when it is cold and flu season, a lot of people love to stock up on their honey and have that available. For ourselves at our store, we do a lot of gift baskets, a lot of corporate baskets. So when I get that phone call of, it's corporate time, we're doing baskets, that can be challenging because, there's times where I call Donovan's and go, I need 80 jars of this size in 2 weeks. Can you do it? And they always come through. And we also communicate on the busy season of what we've ordered year to year. So that way there's not too many surprises, but sometimes there is. But just trying to definitely have that communication with the grocery store or who's selling your product. So it's just easier for everybody. Inventory can be challenging. I know a lot of people were talking about pricing. Ourselves, we're also a markup of 30 to 40% in our store. The one thing is with these guys being local in Cambridge as well, it has been a pricing where when they come to the store and they also go direct to farm to these guys, that our pricing is very, very similar. Could be anywhere from 50 cents more or 50 cents less, depending on changing in pricing. But we try to keep that as consistent as well, because if we are out of a product, I do love sending people directly to them as well. And of course, if they're out of a certain size honey, they love sending people directly to our store as well. So it's a good working relationship, with your grocery store that you're supplying, or the chain that you're supplying as well. What's another one here? Pricing as a farmer is really hard. Know your value, record your time, definitely, make sure that you guys keep all records of your time spent, the expensive labels, the time of jarring, everything like that, and coming up with a price that is going to make sure that you pay yourselves. It is always a struggle. I find it myself when we are doing our products as well, that wholesale and then that retail as well, being direct at farmers markets. So there's no surprises when customers go from one spot to the next, and there's a $10 difference. We try to keep everything very, very similar. Another thing too, let's see, that we can talk on, placement on shelves for us, clean, crisp. We also love to put our honey by all of our tea items as well, and any of our morning necessities as well. So that's something that we also work on, is placement in our store of the perfect place to have honey on our shelves to promote this business and to keep sales going on a consistent basis. We generally order from Donovan's every 3 weeks. So there's lots of cases of honey that come in. So it is nice and fresh, and always available on the shelves. So even if it's getting low for us, some people do email. We just do a quick text message and say, hey, need 5 cases of the 250 mil, running low. And because we're really close to each other, we're literally not even 10 minutes from one side to the next, honey can be delivered on a very timely fashion to us, which is a bonus. And another thing too, social media, promoting yourself is very important, and know where you're selling your product. That's the one thing I do really, really promote with our growers, our suppliers, is definitely, letting people know where they can find their product, that we have your product, and keeping that clear communication up and going with customers, and growing the business, which is important. It's going to grow month to month. The more work and effort that goes into it, you start seeing that gradual growing of your business. It does take time. Things don't always happen overnight, but, and if you end up going somewhere and they don't need your honey or they don't need your product, where there's one door that might not be opening, there's always many others that will. I have learned that over the years myself. selling our own products. So no is never an answer. It's just an opportunity to find another door. So that's kind of a little point that I want to point out. Some people get really discouraged and don't. But also, find where your products are going to be successful in being sold locally and at stores as well. I think that's most of my little points today for honey.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. It's interesting. The messaging that we're hearing is kind of consistent, whether you're coming from this, the vendor side or the grocer side, right? The retail side. And the things I think that Dan talked about that were really important from his perspective as a he's wanting to sell his product in your space, let's say, are things that you really pick up on as a retailer that are really important for a smooth, kind of that smooth relationship. There's a question in the chat. You approach Donovan's to be part of your store, but do you encourage people to also approach you for placement in your location?
Absolutely. We generally, because we are a smaller store, we generally do a rule of thumb if we don't bring more than 3 of something, because we want everybody to be successful. And because we're a very niche grocery store, specialty store, we want to make sure that our ratio is very consistent. We are surrounded by the larger box stores. We do have Costco very close to us, other, larger chains. So people know that when they're coming into our store, that they're first of all getting the best of the best product, and that's what we do on our shelves. But for us, it is generally the rule of 3, so everyone can be successful. And also, too, other beekeepers might be doing other seasonal products where maybe this beekeeper isn't. So then, therefore, that might be something like candles or lip balms or things like that a store might be interested in maybe carrying seasonally, which sometimes carrying seasonally turns into an all year thing. Mm-hmm. So starting somewhere is the most important, to even just having your product in a location, even if it's just for the month of December for Christmas. It's a start, and it's also a good way for you to let other businesses know, hey, I've been at this store and this is what we do. So it's a good stepping stone. And I do encourage people, when they want to, come into the store to promote their product, always bring your product. Be prepared in bringing your product, because seeing it and how it's going to be displayed and everything is so important to the success of being on our shelves.
And, to Dan's point, like he said, he basically carries a case of honey in his car or truck or whatever vehicle. And, so that he does, when he does go to a place and he uses his just ask approach, he's like, and here it is right here. Like, will you sell my honey? And here's my here's what I have. And, the pricing and all of that is up front. Right. And that's to Wendy's point as well. And to your point about, don't be discouraged, like, reach out. And I think that ties nicely back to Dan's approach, his just ask, right? And you're in a coffee shop and, they have bee juice, and do they need a supplier? Or it opens up ideas, for future, like different opportunities, maybe at other coffee shops or whatever, right? So retail spaces and that sort of thing. Dan or Wendy, do you have anything else that you might want to add to this discussion? And okay.
I don't have anything to add. I almost have more of a, I've always kind of wondered if I was being silly. So your approach with like the rule of 3, Leslie, I've always maintained that if there's a local beekeeper, I shouldn't pitch my honey, I should, I don't want to step on anyone's toes, sort of thing, and promote them, like I said in my presentation there.
Right.
But you like the rule of 3, and I've had a coffee shop owner tell me the same thing. Like, you shouldn't stop yourself from, like, it's a market. People want diversity. You appreciate diversity in product up to a certain scale.
I think that's the most important thing, because like, for example, Donovan's doesn't do buckwheat honey. And so, when customers come in, then it's able to work still with another local producer that does buckwheat honey, or other products. So we still want the customer supporting local, and we still want the customer being able to find the products that they want and that they need. But I think too, when you're going in to pitch your product, I know you had mentioned, some people say some other things about those other producers on the shelves. And I often tell people, us farmers are in a very small bubble, and we need to support each other more than ever. And so I think that's one thing that, if someone were to come in and not talk nice about another farmer, then it makes me question having their product even on the shelves. I thoroughly love working with farmers that want to work together and grow everybody's businesses in a way that we're all successful, and getting more local food to more local people. And I think that's the key to being able to say that, these products are available and successful in selling.
I can just jump in on that one too, about how many different products. Sometimes vendors want to be the only one. And I had someone who was doing handmade soaps, and she was quite upset when I had another handmade soap vendor who was much smaller scale and just starting out. And I had to do some feather smoothing. But for food items, I think people really like, if there's any differentiation, if there's one thing that's, like buckwheat or a single source or different size jar or different label, I'm happy to have a couple different ones on the shelf. Although it might mean that the first one sells a bit less, it also might mean that people start to think of this as a place where you can get a whole spectrum of different special honeys. So, I also have the Billy Bee or whatever the Sobeys brand is. I don't even know what it is. Maybe the Compliments brand on the shelf, because it's half the price. And for some people, that makes a difference whether or not they can buy honey. So I think that the more choice that we can offer people, the better. Now, I wouldn't have 10 different local honey suppliers, but certainly 2 or even 3 wouldn't be out of line, I don't think. I have a few different maple syrup producers, and they're in different places in the store. They're with different kinds of displays, and I think some weeks we sell more of one, and some weeks we sell more of the other.
And I think, Leslie, to your point, Donovan's doesn't do buckwheat. And if your customers are looking for buckwheat, it would be really great to, like to your point, bring it in, and then your customers are getting what they need in your store, right? So, as a retailer, to sort of be paying attention to, those gaps, I guess, and, being able to source a product that would fill that gap, I think is important. Just hang on. There might be a question in the chat here for Dan. How would you approach a retailer that wants to double or more your wholesale price? That would make your item very expensive.
That doesn't happen to me. It's only once happened that someone really marked it up, and they just had like a higher end market. Like it was like a flower and gift shop sort of spot, and they sold tons of it. They tied a honey dipper around it and sold for more than double what the wholesale was, for sure. And I don't know, it just worked for them. I have a friend, and his name's Graham Fors. He's part of the OBA, and he says that he encourages people to do that. Like, he doesn't see why not. He tries to capture that high-end market, and he's adamant, like, this is the best honey you've ever tasted, it's worth that sort of thing. That's not my approach at all. I take a more utilitarian approach to it. I think like, as long as I'm giving my wholesale price list, and I'm saying this is what I want per unit when you buy a case, sort of thing. As long as I get it, it doesn't really matter to me. I think that's great. I'd rather the vendor makes as much as they can off of my product, so then therefore they continue to buy it and make their own margins. Again,
you've all sort of talked about valuing your time and making sure that you're paying yourself and setting a price that is reasonable. And again, I would encourage everyone, if you missed the costing and pricing, to go back and review that information. Our colleague does a really great job in providing some really good examples and explaining everything. So I think we'll move on to our next section. And one of the things that we tried to do for this particular portion is to get people find food processors who used honey as part of a recipe, to make a product. And so we reached out to a number of folks. And Melanie, maybe you want to chat, just talk about some of the people that you've talked with and some of the stories that they've shared with you. Sorry, one second. I just want to say a really big thank you to Leslie and Wendy and Dan for your presentations tonight. Your insights are invaluable to folks who are stepping into that retail space, and hopefully they'll step out with a little more confidence, just approaching people and just asking, right? So anyway, sorry, Mel.
No worries. My dog actually decided to bark right at that moment, so it was a good opportunity for me to mute and get her sorted. So yeah, I was, we were hoping to bring in some kind of out of the ordinary options for wholesale. Options for people who are trying to sell their products. So, there are opportunities out there like Lush Cosmetics, where they're making cosmetics from beeswax. They're making shampoos from honey. They do like to source their products locally according to their their business structure and their themes, making sure that they are showcasing what they stand for. There's a company in Toronto that does a gin drink called the Bee's Knees. They also source local Ontario honey and really promote that end of it, that to make sure that they're utilizing that local feature and can advertise that they are, investing in the local market. There's a simple syrup producer in St. Catharines that's making spirits or syrups for spirits to make cocktails. And so they're using honey in their concoctions, they're flavoring their syrups, and they're also buying in local honey for that opportunity. Many breweries out there are looking for honey. They do honey beers, they do honey braggots, they do all sorts of options like that. So again, if you're looking for an opportunity to sell at a larger capacity, these are definitely opportunities. I did reach out to a company in Toronto that's been hitting the waves. They've been getting shout outs from all the influencers, called Hot Honey. They also buy local Ontario honey. They infuse it with peppers, and then they encourage you to put it on your toast and your eggs and everything under the sun. And they're doing a great job of pushing their product and their approach as well. And they also buy local honey. So there's bakeries, there's butcher shops. There really is just endless possibilities out there. Granola bar makers, Daryl's granola bars also produces local granola bars with local honey. And I believe even things like ginger cookies use local buckwheat honey in some of their products as well. So like all of these presentations tonight, It's just getting out there. It's asking, it's checking around, it's looking at stores, it's looking at products, what has honey in it? Is there an opportunity for you to get a relationship going? And yeah, just carry your product around, have a little bit of information that goes with it, your business card. And as we've always kind of reiterated with this marketing approach is that it's always good to have a story. So if you can connect to people, through their hearts and through their stories, that's always going to make sure that you get remembered and you're going to stand out from the crowd. So always have, like a neat little, story to go around with your product, and you might just stick out a little bit from those around you. So there's definitely opportunities out there for whatever scale of production you can kind of focus on.
It really is important to tell your story and find ways to share your story. And that can go a long way in the marketing of your product. So there is a question, what type of packaging do larger food processors want to get the honey in? 5-liter pails, 25-gallon pails. Any thoughts on that? Mel, in your conversations?
Yeah, for the most part, like we always measure honey in kilograms. Or I guess liters in some cases, but I would say like a typical bulk size container is a 15 kg or a 30-liter pail. It all depends on how they're utilizing it, what kind of access they need, if they want smaller buckets to be able to pick it up and pour it, or if they want to scoop out of it. But I would say probably at the start is like a 7 kg and moving up from there. When you get into larger situations like breweries, you might have to deliver it in a tote. And then it's, that's quite a bit. I don't even know how much honey's in a tote, but it would be a lot.
I was just going to say, anytime that we've sold to breweries or cideries or anything like that, it's been in 5-gallon pails, or smaller 15-kilogram pails as well. And then I know it's not the food processing side of it, but like in terms of restaurants, they either, in order to get them used to using your honey, you might have to accommodate what they're used to. So if their line is used to already having squeeze bottles, we do squeeze bottles. But if you can get them trained onto 15-kilogram or 5-gallon pails with spouts on them, then you can just interchange them when they're empty or close to empty. You bring them a new one, you take the old one, and you refill it, sort of thing. We found that works really well for interchangeability.
I had an opportunity to speak with someone who we had approached early on for tonight. And her company they make sauces and small quantities. And she was saying that it's sold by weight, and they usually, get the smallest packaging, like by weight, that the supplier had available for the amount that they needed in their sauces. And they did, again, build a really strong, they built a really strong relationship with the supplier. And one thing that she said too is, they had approached the supplier, but the supplier basically ended up interviewing them. And, in terms of, how much are you going to need? How consistent is this need going to be? And, questions like that. And I think all of you have actually said something about that, being able to deliver what you promise, right? And not overextend and create expectations that you can't meet. So I think those are some of the things that are really important. So I'm not seeing any more questions. Once again, I'd like to say thank you to everyone. Thank you for participating tonight. Thank you to our speakers. And especially thank you to Melanie for, it was a long road to get here in the planning. And it's been a great partnership to work with the Ontario Beekeepers Association, and we look forward to future collaborations with your organization. And thanks to everyone for joining. And please reach out to Melanie if you have questions for us at OMAFRA. Moving forward, we're happy to, get you to the right people if it's not us. And thank you, and have a great rest of your evening.